So last time, actually, we talked a little bit about the difference between open games and closed games and how you should react to each. This game, very closed game. How many people feel more comfortable in open positions in general? Okay, that makes a lot of sense. We've got a 6-year-old in the audience, and usually younger players do prefer the open positions because, you know, why is open position preferable usually to people who are very young? Yes, in open positions there are a lot of tactics. What defines open positions are lots of lines open, like by pawns getting traded off the board. It's really the only way to open lines, right? And therefore, there's a lot of contact between the pieces and a lot of tactics. So closed games, by contrast, a lot of maneuvering, and a lot of times more positional players, sometimes more mature, prefer that. Though there are some exceptions these days. It seems like it kind of can go both ways easily. So the game started with a perk opening, and white played a little bit strangely. You were white in this game, right? So were you familiar with the perk opening, or
never played against.
You never played against it? What's your rating?
About 1400.
Okay, because I thought you played very well in this game.
Okay.
You played well over 1400. Actually, the part of the game where you played the weakest in a way.
Towards the end.
Well, the very end, obviously, because that's what made you lose. Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Darn it. Well, but it wasn't just the that part. It was the very beginning. It's not like it was like so high stakes. The fact that you played the beginning poorly didn't really affect your position that drastically. That's the weird thing about the opening. A lot of times, unless you're playing a super sharp opening, you can kind of go off on your own, and it's not like it's going to change the evaluation from winning to lost. It's just kind of a tip of the hat to your opponent that you haven't studied the opening. That's about it. So keep it in perspective. That's the important thing. A lot of people, they try to get this airtight opening repertoire, which is awesome, but keep it in perspective that opponent differs and you don't know what to do. You can rely on your natural chess talent and you'll be okay. The worst thing you can do is try to have an airtight opening repertoire, then things don't go according to plan and you panic and get really upset and play badly. So, and I do have students like that, and I'm like, yeah, for you, maybe you just shouldn't study the opening at all. Anyway, in this position, white played bishop to d3. I just think that move, I mean, I saw a few people playing in the database, but it strikes me as a bit strange. What do you think some more common developing systems in this position are? First of all, black's move is a little bit unusual. Normally, when black plays this line, how do they continue their development here? Yes, they play g6, and they fee and kettle their bishop, and they castle. And often they play knight bd7 later, but usually the first order of business is developing this bishop to the g7 square. Okay. Well, yeah, there are some other possibilities. Like e5 is sometimes played, I believe. It's kind of weird. It allows an endgame right away. Knight bd7 is definitely plausible. It's just a little bit less common. So I don't blame you for not knowing the opening here, but this is more about opening principles. It's not just about knowing the opening.
That's where I went, yeah. I mean, I was just going general guidelines.
Yeah, you just went on general guidelines. It's just that bishop d3 is not my favorite move here of all because of a couple things. Why do you guys think I don't like bishop d3 that much? Okay, Julian said the bishop's just protecting e4. Arjun?
It blocks the defense of the d-pawn.
It blocks defense of the d-pawn. That might become relevant later. Yeah?
They can't shadow the other bishop if they're just attacking the front pawn.
Right, okay. If they fee and kettle this bishop, then you're just going to be, as we say, biting on granite. That bishop is just not doing anything if that pawn gets developed to g6. Thanks. So I would prefer either one or the other. Like, either just go for it, play bishop c4, be very aggressive, or play bishop e2 ultimately and be very quiet and give yourself some space. The knight could go to f3 and then you could play bishop e2. The other thing I don't like about bishop d3, for what it's worth, is that when they play c5 later, sometimes your bishop gets targeted. So certainly not a terrible move, but just seems a little bit maybe slightly off. And then your opponent played e5, and yeah, d5. This just strikes me as unpleasant for white. I have some experience in positions where I've gotten, like, kind of found myself in positions like this, and I really don't like the fact that my pawns are like this. Listen, I don't play d4 openings. I play e4. So normally when we have this type of structure, I'm always like, well, it would be nice if I was an actual d4 player and my pawn was on c4, so I'd actually have something going on the queen side, right? Because now it's like, it looks like kind of maybe I should have something on the queen side, but I don't really have much momentum. And then on the flip side, black kind of has a clear plan here. Even though it's early to say that, there's something that strikes me about this position that black might be able to develop. Does anybody see what I mean? I know it's a little bit in the future, but what type of break might black try to play later in the game? Yes, f5 could come into play, f5 in conjunction with c6, and all of this happened, and it's not worse for white, but it's just a little bit less pleasant for white. I find that white's plans are harder to kind of concoct here. And I mean, unless you want to like try to play for f4 or something, I don't know. I might go for that just because I don't really like, I want to get some play, and I feel if I just play standard, like knight f3 castle, like I don't really know what I'm doing with my pawns. I might just try to play for f4 immediately here.
I think he should take on f4, right?
What's that?
He should take on f4.
Well, he could take on f4, but then I get to take with the bishop, and this is a little bit of like an unusual formation, but seems okay for me to white. I prefer that than developing the knight first and not really having a plan. Now I can play knight f3 and castles, and at least I have more space and kind of like a clear idea. Queen d2, rook e1. It's a little bit unusual. Normally this bishop would be over here, and then I wouldn't like it as much for white because you would have a lot of play on the diagonal and you rook e8. But because your bishop is on this passive square e7, I'm kind of feeling this, you know? Especially it's nice the knight can't come to g4 and do this thingy, which would also be effective because that's a strong square here. Question in the back?
What about planning to castle queenside at this point?
Oh, if we got this, if we achieve this position, it's very dangerous to castle queenside. I would probably be more inclined in this specific situation to just play knight f3 and castle kingside and hope to get an attack on the king side. But I don't think your idea is out of the question. I just feel like we might be losing more than we gain here. Because now when they play for like a c6 idea, they're opening up lines against our king, whereas it's, I mean, I guess if they take here, you open up this bishop, so that's kind of nice. But other than that, it seems like your king is much less safe here than it was over here. But what is castling queenside really open for you? I mean, you want to play h4, h5, h6. I don't really think so. Think in this position it's about the pawn storm, you know. But it's definitely not a bad idea. It just kind of strikes me maybe not the perfect fit for this position. So anyway, that's kind of interesting. You played knight f3. You played c6. And now after castle, yeah, and see, this is the thing. After c6, it's a bit annoying. Because you didn't really want to take on c6 and give him the center control and the rook on b8. So you just castled. And it's funny because this is an example of a position that computer analysis will not be particularly helpful for. Because I think that this position is fine for white. But I personally think it's unpleasant to play for white. Like, I think the advantage, if black has an advantage, it's, granted, it's got to be a relatively small advantage objectively. But I think from a positional point of view, it's much more fun for black. Why? What makes this position more fun for black? And whereas black's going to do what?
He's going to play f5, f4.
Or f5, you know, maybe bishop f6, e4, knight e5, that kind of thing, right? So to me, and then there's also the psychological element that you're white and you're a bit on the defensive. Of course, that shouldn't be relevant, but somehow it feels like, this feels like even more negative to me to have to search for a plan here because I'm white and I feel like I should have some kind of edge, right? Anyway, so your opponent did play f5. Your opponent, by the way, is about 2,000, 2,100?
Yeah, he was 2000.
Okay.
2006 year.
Alex Marler. Yeah.
Addison
And you're Kevin, is that right?
Jason.
Jason, okay. Jason, great. And you're over 2,000 as well? Okay, great. So what do you think about all this? You're a high-rated player. Do you agree with a lot of what I'm saying, or do you disagree with something?
Well, yeah.
So what?
But I think black is probably better here.
So Jason, who's an expert in the audience, also thinks that black is better. How would you have played differently for white? Would you have done something different? What kind of configuration would you have chosen in the opening? Do you have a favorite configuration against the perk? Not really. Oh, you don't play E4? You play D4? Okay, well you play D4, so there you go. And Julian, you play E4, right?
I play everything.
Okay, you play everything, nice. All right, so, and by the way, what was your name in the back who suggested castling queenside? Kevin? There are a lot of good lines in the perk where you castle queenside. It's just a lot of times those are ones where you haven't made an exchange on D5, so you kind of have a little bit more control over the position. There's not that open C file. But you can do a kind of English attack against the perk sometimes. But note that that's usually when your opponent fianchettos your bishop, which gives you more to chew on, right? Because if your opponent fianchettos their bishop and you castle queenside, you can play like H4, H5 and attack, right? Whereas when their pawns are more pristine on H7 and G7, you're not really hitting anything. If you get your pawn to H6, they can play G6, right? That makes sense? So you slid your bishop back to F1. And now Marler's not here at the moment. He played a very aggressive move here. He just played G5 immediately. As they say in poker, I'm kind of a nit, so I probably wouldn't have even played that here. I would have just played, I would have just tried to nurse my advantage in another way. Any other ideas? Julian?
Queen E8, so you try to take the H5.
I didn't even think of that. I'm kind of more concerned with trying to develop here a little bit. I just want to play in this. I feel like my center is strong. I don't really feel like I need to play G5. Although G5 might be a very good move. I just think there's other ways. If for some reason you don't have the feeling that you want to play G5 because of your king safety, you could, I think, get a nice position here and play a little bit more conservatively. Any plans come to mind? Julian?
Knight F6, bishop D7, bishop D8, bishop A5.
That's an interesting plan. So you want to play knight F6, bishop D7, bishop E8. The thing is, eventually there might be a knight G5, so you're going to have to take a break and play H6 for sure, right? If this knight could come to G5 here, that would be pretty sweet. Actually, even if you play queen E8, I think we could also consider that right away. In general, it's something you should watch out for. I was just thinking also black could just play like bishop F6 and, you know, maybe E4, knight C5, just kind of like play the position more in the center and less in like trying to just like attack. But I like the way G5 turned out, so kudos to Marler for being very creative and aggressive, you know, even though his king's here. Be careful about doing that, but now king H1.
Will be just fine.
Okay, well, C4, I'd probably just play C4 and try to get something going on my own here. King H1 was what you played.
The idea is to save the square for the knight, right?
Yeah, I know but you're getting like just very defensive, and
That's not how you set the pieces up. The king will also E1 and the rook will also H1.
Right, but
So he
keep
played
in mind, at the time
G4.
I studied a lot of Steinitz.
so he's
I
playing.
bring all my pieces back to the back rank.
So he's joking. The white player in this position is joking that he was studying a lot of Steinitz at the time and wanted to move all of his pieces backwards. So yeah, the defense here seems very passive. I'm not sure it's totally necessary, but okay. Now you're getting aggressive. Attacked his rook. And now you played F3. So yeah, so you're trying to justify this knight on G1. Maybe it'll get back out at some point soon. See the light of day again. So he attacked you, and now you retreated. And then, yeah, I was thinking he might just try to play G3 here right away, but instead he tried to build up with H5. Now, how many people in this position like black's position? How many people think maybe black has overextended and gone too far with his idea? No? Anyone? Wait, did you have your hand up? You had your hand up both times.
He likes the position for black, but he thinks it's overextended.
Okay, understand. All right. Yeah, I guess that is possible for both things to be true. You could like a position that's not even good, right? But here, white played bishop d3, so you're redeveloping your pieces. You're redeveloping your pieces. You played bishop d3 earlier in the game, and then you played bishop f1, and now you're playing back to d3. And yet, at this point, this is a very logical move. You're attacking f5. So I'm just teasing you. I actually do not think that is a bad move at all. It's a good move. So now your position is starting to look a little bit more like it makes sense. Your opponent played queen g8. You played f4. I'm going to go through some of this quicker because this game is just incredibly long, and it starts to get tactical like another 10 moves from now. And now, again, I thought maybe your opponent would play g3 at some point, like just try to break through. And then in this position, what might you try for black here? Don't call out. Julian? I don't know if that's going to quite work. I think you have a more... I do think you can sacrifice here, but... Yeah, Arjun?
With D3?
Rook d3 is a cool idea, but the rook kind of wanted to chill here. I was thinking that black could just play h4 in this position. Because now, if the knight were to take on d3, what would happen? Arjun, what do you think would happen here?
The queen would take.
Do you think, whenever you have a choice between captures, I think it's always good to take a deep, long look at it, right? So, when you play your chess games, do you play really quickly or do you play more on the slower side?
I usually play quickly.
You usually play pretty quickly, okay. So one sign that you should slow down is when you have a few different ways to capture. Because that's exactly the point where it's a make it or break it. If you find the right capture, you might be winning. If you find the weaker capture, it might be like whatever, meh or drawish. So this is exactly where you should think. Now, which one is better and why? And this is true for all levels. I mean, even up to the highest levels, it seems that a lot of mistakes are made in moments of capture. So it's something that we should all be very aware of. So yes, I'm sure taking with a pawn, you understand why it's very strong. We're just threatening checkmate in 2, right? See that? We're threatening queen to h7 followed by queen to h2 mate. And as typical in a lot of these types of King's Indian-like structures, this wasn't a King's Indian, but it's starting to resemble one, right? You're a d4 player, so you play on the white side of this, right? Yeah. And now this is just unstoppable, right? I mean, try to stop it. Bishop d3, yeah, you can't even play, I'm sorry, queen h7, yeah, you can't even play bishop e2 because it's still maiden into, right? So Julian is suggesting bishop d3 just so that you can survive for another moment, right? And now if queen h2, king f1, queen h1, king e2, queen g2 check, at least you can run away to e3, right? But of course, mate is imminent there. Actually, there's mate on f2, right? You guys see that? So queen h2, king f1, queen h1, king e2, queen takes g2, king e3, and then queen f2. Right? It's good to try to visualize things before they actually happen, because that's what it takes to get to the next level. Of course, you can also win by taking this.
You don't mate.
Exactly. Yeah, you never know. Like, I always think it's important to find the quickest win, because some of you guys play game 29, game 30, and in those tournaments, you know, if you find the speedier win, you might win instead of choking and when you had 2 minutes on your clock and losing. So it's important. All right, so that would have been one interesting idea, but Marler plays this game very patiently. So he, you know, I keep looking at him and I'm like, play, get there, crash through.
No,
And
if he
he's.
pushed- if he pushed, my idea was to push my pawn.
So you were just gonna play, yeah. I think that's probably why he didn't do it. Although the thing is, I think he can also. Where here, I assume.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I think the thing is here you can also try to sacrifice.
You play knight g4.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Knight g4. That maybe he could play this because this just looks very. It looks very dangerous to take this, right?
Knight of 2 is
Right.
unstoppable.
I mean, this rook h6 or queen h7 are unstoppable, and you're just gonna have to sacrifice your knight, and I'm gonna crash through, right?
But my pawn doesn't have to take his knight.
Okay, so if you don't take, it's gonna be a little tricky for you to stop knight f2. I guess you were thinking bishop e3.
Maybe he can play bishop c3 and bishop.
No, bishop e3 seems like the best choice, but then, well, I don't know if this is good. No, because this just wins.
Yeah.
This is actually, well, this is just like, we're just gonna win a knight here, right? That knight on g1, look what happened.
See, if your king were on e1, you could take on a king.
So, okay. So yeah, this,
But I don't know if bishop to e3 is my idea either. I think it was.
but otherwise, how are you defending f2? Because it's actually a mate threat, right? Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah.
I haven't seen too many mates like that. So like if you move your queen away, like actually like knight f2 is just chess base is broken. It can't move anymore because it's checkmate. So you can't stop. I think the fact that it's both checkmate and it's threatening to you know, fork the king and the queen, right? So I guess you would have to play rook e2 or something here,
Right.
and then sacrifice the exchange, something like this. But that now we've also reopened our file, so it seems pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good eye, Julian. Though you saw, like that's what I was actually going to make that a little quiz, like what does black do here, but you had already seen it. So. But this kind of thing is really par for the course for people who play the King's Indian defense as black. These types of tactics are very typical. Anyway, Alex played h4 instead. And now you played bishop to c3 to try to kind of like pin down his knight because the knight was wreaking so much havoc in those other variations. So he got out of it with king h7. Okay, rook c1, b6. So yeah, Alex is just like kind of biding his time before he tries to do anything too nasty to you. And now you played knight d4, trying to get your knight into play. That makes sense. Rook e8. So now this is a good move. Knight h5. It looks like a strong idea, trying to attack your pawn and get things going on the h file. So you've successfully kind of closed down the possibility of him opening up the g file. So now he's trying to open up the h file. And now he's remaneuvering all of his pieces. I think he's trying to get like, I mean, it's just amazing the maneuvers in this game. So here, what do you think black tried? You know. Arshin?
Sacrifice the knight.
Where? You have multiple places to sacrifice a knight.
Knight takes g3.
Okay, so you could try knight takes g3. And then I think that Marler was thinking here that if knight takes g3, rook g3, the rook would get a little bit closer to help the defense, right? Because, for instance, if queen h5, threatening, you know, queen h1 and rook h2 and fun stuff like that, now the rook is kind of participating in the defense, right? Like it could go rook g2, and now if you play queen h1, king f2, bishop h4 check, it seems like maybe we're hanging on a little bit here, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So instead, and actually White did a good job of, I mean, you played great defense and you hang on for a while with the move that he did play. But I think the move that he played, knight takes f4, pawn f4, now after queen h5, this might be a little bit trickier to defend, right? So just because you're now threatening directly queen h1 check, king f2, and bishop h4 check, which will be kind of nasty. Like, let's just see for the sake of argument how ugly this is. So now we have a couple choices, right? Like I said earlier, whenever you have these moments, you want to look at all your choices. So you could play rook h2 check, or you could play bishop h4 check.
Rook h2. If you play bishop h4, king e2.
And then your rook is left out of the party, right? So you want to play rook h2 check first. Bishop g2, no good because we can take it. So king must drop back to e1, and now what? Arjun, yeah?
Bishop h4.
Now bishop h4. So this is an example of what we call in chess. What is this an example of? Move order, right? You know, we need to make sure that we find the right move order of our checks and our captures. So, okay. So obviously b4 wasn't played. That was just one of those dummy moves we make to illustrate a point. So what kind of defensive ideas do you have here for white to not get just resigns next move? Julian?
Maybe you can play rook e2, king f2, king e2. But also here, I want to play rook h3 just to stop.
Okay, so you're thinking, wait, you want to play rook h3 here?
Yeah.
I think you're down too much material to get away with that because he hasn't sacrificed enough. Like if you play rook h3, what? He hasn't sacrificed enough, I think, for you to get away with this. Like, what the material would be, you'd be down in exchange, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so you just think that's the best you can do?
Yeah, but maybe rook e2.
Yeah, this I don't think this is going to work out too well because you're actually down in exchange and a pawn, right? So it's not enough of a try.
Rook h2 is my pawn back.
Rook h2 here. Do I have? Let's see. I was thinking I might have some tactical ways here to. Yeah, I think I might be able to play like rook c8, maybe target you.
Well, then I take on h3.
Well,
You right?
yeah, I'm trying to take on c4 and you're trying to take on f5.
No, but you have rook takes f5. Wait, no, you don't. No. Yeah, rook bishop takes h3.
Yeah, maybe you will win the pawn back. It's possible. I think I should be able to find something useful to do with my time though, like maybe check you and then you know, if you go back to the
I
corner.
don't think that's
What's that?
I don't think I'm going to do that.
Well, if you go to f2, I'm coming in with my bishop too. It just looks kind of nasty. Again, I'm coming in with my bishop to h4 and if you come to e3, now I get to put my rook on g3.
King e2. Excuse me.
Yeah. It's not looking good though. Because if you play king e2, then I'm going to at least win the f4 pawn, which should be even stronger than the other pawns that I was winning. And regardless, I'm up in exchange, so it looks like things are kind of really going my way there. I don't think you're desperate enough in this position to do that. It's good to look at stuff like that. If your opponent sacrificed enough material, you want to look at those simplifying variations that trade queens. It's an excellent instinct, but here, I think you're better off trying to weather the storm. There are two reasonable options. You play bishop g2 to try to kind of shield the checks a little bit. Any other ways to try to shield yourself here as white?
Rook e2.
Rook e2, but what does even better job of like shielding you? Arson?
Queen e2.
Not queen e2.
There's always rook h2 if you play queen e2, right? He wins your queen.
Like the same idea as he did, but
Julian's saying that here there's just rook h2.
Also bishop h4.
Well, also bishop h4, yeah. So what else here? Bishop g2 makes sense. I also think rook g2 also, the famous bean kettle rook. That also makes us, gives us a little bit of space because the rook stops the rook h2 check, which is really convenient, right? And if bishop h4 check, king e2, and somehow it's hard for you to get more pieces into the game, right?
Yeah, actually before I wanted to put my bishop on e6. In that variation, I could leave bishop takes e4.
And now with rook h2 here, I was thinking maybe just put the other rook on g3. And then you have bishop h4, but now, you know, we can consider like just giving back some material because we still got 2 pieces for a rook, right? And it doesn't seem like you have any checks or even any ways to threaten checks, so it seems like we're relatively safe here.
Can we look at
Yeah.
rook e2? I think rook e2 might be better.
Well, let's keep going into the game because it gets kind of interesting. I think I like rook g2 because it shields us a lot. I mean, we can take a brief look at rook e2, but it's just.
The other rook. The other rook I want.
Oh, you want to play the other rook there? And you just want to try to get in here as well. But I'm worried about you giving up this square.
If you play that move, then I think I just play bishop g2 now.
Yeah, you could try that. And I'm going to try to go after the f4 pawn now. Yeah, you pretty much have to play queen d2. Yeah, it's another possibility. I think maybe I missed something there, though. I don't know if I really want to play g3. I was just thinking about it because if I don't have something concrete after g3, I probably want to leave it here.
Play g3.
I think I prefer maybe just playing queen to h1 and seeing how this goes. Because it's looking kind of promising. But yeah, it's kind of, I just think that it doesn't look like your king is as shielded in this variation at all. So, and also, like we at some moment we can maybe consider playing for our g3 move. So anyway, I think rook g2 looks like a good defensive option. You played bishop to g2. And then he played queen h2 check. And the thing with this one is that it does give back the pawn immediately on f4, which is kind of annoying. Because that opens up another extra line against your king. Yeah.
Also makes them all passive.
And the problem also is that here he's got this extra idea to do what? What can black do here to try to gain some immediate material back if he wants to?
The rook's trapped on g3 on e3.
Rook to g2.
Bishop g5.
Yeah, black can try bishop g5, and the rook on e3 can't be protected, so you have to try to drop the exchange right away. And black doesn't even need to take it immediately. He could start off with something like rook h2, right? So that might have been a better try for him. He played g3 immediately, and actually here you played queen f1 again. You have this instinct to trade queens, which is a great instinct when you're getting attacked. That's great. But it didn't work out as well for you after queen f1. He had a good idea here. What do you think maybe black should have tried here? What did he do? I can't remember what he did, but I thought he had something kind of good here. The thing is your pawns are very strong as black, right? Black has very strong pawns, 6 of them against your 4. So even though he's technically down a piece for 2 pawns here, if he can get even a little bit of material back, he might be in a very good position indeed. Or bishop g, yeah, queen g4. I think that is what he did. He did do queen g4 check followed by bishop g5. But what about bishop g5 immediately? Now if queen takes f4, bishop takes f4, what are we threatening? Well, we're threatening bishop takes e3, but we're actually threatening something even stronger that will, could you raise your hand, Julian? We're actually threatening something even stronger that will just make white basically resign instantly. Yes, rook h2 here would just make white resign. Because if you, like, say, let's play our traditional dummy move. I keep making the same dummy move, b4. If b4, rook h2, and now if white plays king f1, bishop takes rook, right? So we win the whole rook, not the exchange. And there's nothing you can do about it. This is actually a pretty aesthetic example of white's rook just being rather checkmated, right? So that would be kind of a cool way for him to have played. I think you had the right idea trying to get your queen to the defense, but maybe a better execution would have been queen e1, just going after this pawn. Because notice now you kind of got rook h2 held at bay because you can just take on g3. Right?
Right, and if he brings his bishop over now, I can take with my rook, right?
Yeah, you can take on g3 with your rook, or could you also take with your queen? I think you can also just take with your
Yeah,
queen.
either way.
Because now you've got this position and you've got the two pieces for the rook and the pawn, but it looks like you've got a nice little blockade. Yeah, if you take with the rook, let's see, is that also okay? Or does this black have something good here? I think the problem here is black can now play this, and instead of, yeah, that looks like a stronger move, because instead of just winning the exchange, I think he's going to win the whole shebang here. Similar to the variation we were just looking at. So you got to take with the queen, and this looks like a good saving attempt, right? So instead, he played, oh, you played queen f1, and he played queen g4 check. And then he played bishop g5. And now you played rook e2, and he played bishop f6. Played rook d2, e3, rook d3, f4. Wow, those pawns are really coming at you, huh? Luckily, you've got the light squares blockaded. So you play queen f3. Like, it seems like you're pretty enthusiastic about trading queens in this position. And now, yeah, you could have tried taking. It looked kind of promising for black just because you just almost can't make any moves, right? Instead, he wanted to keep queens on the board, which is understandable. And then you played knight to e6. You know, it's a move we talked about earlier, and it kind of you've been patient in like not playing it all game, but you finally got your chance, so you decided to take it. And then after bishop e6, right, you want to just kind of like open lines up against his king, which makes a lot of sense. And that's something you also see happening a decent amount in the King's Indian defense, that if black kind of gets too hog wild with his attack, sometimes white will, once they stymie it, they'll get their own attack going on in the center of the queen side. So you do, especially since their king is usually rather exposed, like in this example. But okay, so knight e6, and now here is where we reached a point where you made a big error after playing like some really admirable defense against a player 600 points higher rated. Right? You said you were 1400 at the time?
Right.
Is that?
I
Yeah.
was 1300 at the time, but yeah.
So 700 or 800 points. Now that's admirable, because a lot of people crack against players that are that high rated, right? So this is a good example of how you should. I'm not a believer that you shouldn't look at your opponent's rating. I think that's kind of unrealistic. A lot of times you're going to find out one way or the other, but you certainly should not let it affect your play very much, right? You should still play the same aggressive chess that you would play regardless. And if you're playing a lower rated player, the same applies. You shouldn't like try to play like really, really aggressive moves all the time just because they're lower rated. A lot of times those solid moves are going to really be the ones that make them crack. I mean, so many times I've played in simultaneous exhibitions where I play a lot of weaker players, and sometimes I start to get worried because after the openings, everybody seems to be playing so well, and like I'm not like winning any games quickly. But what happens is, like, after they get out of the opening and you just play a few solid moves, they start to feel this pressure, like, I don't know what to do, right? So I think on both angles, whether you're playing weaker or stronger, for the most part, try to play the board. There's going to be some very small exceptions in certain cases, but why focus on the exceptions, right? Focus on the fact that 95% of the time you play exactly the same, stronger or weaker. Anyway, here, this is the moment where you cracked. And like I said, happens so much when there are different types of captures and checks in a position. That's when strong players, weak players, and everything in between make a lot of errors, a larger than normal error rate. So queen e4 check was what was played. And why is this move so bad? Black to move. What's that? Why is bishop f5 such a good move? Yes, and basically you just do the math. Like, we've lost a piece in this exchange, right? Because this was the piece that we were supposed to recapture. So now instead, they get our rook, and we get their. So we traded rooks, but we ended up netting an extra piece, right? As black, and so this position is now dead lost, right? I think. Was there any more play, or do you reside in this position?
I didn't resign. I played all of
Why isn't it? Oh, I think. Why isn't it going forward? Oh, maybe I didn't have any more moves in my score sheet, or I thought it was.
Yeah, I probably stopped.
Yeah, you might have stopped. You might have stopped notating, or maybe it was ineligible after this point or something. But instead here, what else can you do?
Yeah, I had the right idea, but because I put it through the computer, but my follow-up.
So instead, you could just do something like normal, like d takes e6, and then here, just try to start getting your rooks into play, something like that. Yeah, and it's not entirely clear. It looks like it's hard for you to get this rook into play is the problem, right?
Right.
But certainly you're not resigning. I don't know what's going on here. How do I get this guy into play? I don't think I can. I think I just like hang tough here, right? And hope and just kind of set up like a more of a fortress type situation. I would rather not trade off that rook if I could. But yeah, so there would have been a lot of play left here. So good game. Very interesting game. You know, you can really learn a lot from it. It seems like you played a lot better than 1300 in this game. So good job.